Good evening and a very warm welcome to your English news package with Radio and Television Tonga for the hour. Making headlines, Parliament to resume next week with a reply to His Majesty's opening address. Chairman of Whole House Committee warns members of Parliament to use Tongan language when deliberating in Parliament, and 3-year-olds to enroll in preschool as the best foundation for their learning. We'll have these and more stories later on in the bulletin, including the sports. Now for the stories in details. The Speaker of Parliament informed the members of Parliament that 2 MPs will have an audience with His Majesty tomorrow to deliver the reply from the House for His Majesty's opening address of Parliament for the 2022 session. The 2 MPs are the Prime Minister, Honourable Huakavame Liko, and the Nobles Representative, His Serene Highness Prince Kalaniwalo Fotofili. They will present the outcome from the audience to Parliament on Wednesday next week before the closing of Parliament next Thursday. The construction projects currently in Masilamea, Ewa and other areas can be affected if the petition submitted to Parliament yesterday will not be approved. This was revealed by Tongatapu 5 People's Representative to Parliament, Dr. Isaac Eke, to Radio Tonga News this afternoon. Dr. Isaac Eke was among those who signed the petition from the construction companies, along with Tongatapu Nobles Representative number 2, Lord Tuivakano. The construction project oversees the construction of new houses for families that were affected from the January event to relocate to. The petition is from construction companies requesting to increase the amount of funds allocated for their construction project as the prices for construction materials increases, together with other goods and products. More than 20 companies signed the petition. They are part of the government's construction project following the devastation in January. Speaking to Radio Tonga News, Tongatapu 5 People's Representative Dr. Isaac Eke says the concern from these construction companies is for the government to increase the funds allocated to them before they would resume. Dr. Eke adds the contract was carried out in due process, and the amount given to construction companies for the project following Tropical Cyclone Gita was carried out accordingly. But it was successful because the contract was signed between a division within the Ministry of Infrastructure. However, with this construction project, the contract was with a company outside of the ministry. The request then by these construction companies is for the government to increase the amount given as prices are on the rise. However, the construction companies are delighted they will be meeting the government tomorrow to further discuss the issue. Dr. Ike says if the matter is settled by the government, the construction project will then resume. The hope is to have these families live in their new homes by Christmas. The issue was deliberated by members of Parliament in the Whole House Committee this morning, where the Prime Minister requested the House to let the government handle the matter and to allow them to have a meeting with these companies in order to address the issue. The proposal was approved by the House after 19 members voted in favour. More than 200 homes are being rebuilt following the devastation in January, and only a few construction companies were among those submitting their petition to Parliament. The rest are continuing on their contract with the government. The chairman of the Whole House Committee raised the issue in Parliament for members to only use the Tongan language when deliberating in Parliament. He even warned one of the People's Representative who was mixing Tongan language with English while deliberating in the Whole House Committee. The chairman of the Whole House Committee warned the People's Representative of Tongatapu 7 for his frequent use of English language in Parliament. This follows the deliberations this morning on the petition submitted to Parliament. During the deliberations, the People's Representative of Tongatapu 7, Piveni Piukala, mostly used English terms to raise his points, but was warned by the chairman of the Whole House Committee, Lord Tuilakepa, because of the House's standing orders. Lord Nuku'alofa says he has warned him many times today on his frequent usage of the English terms and that he will be penalized for it. However, Bugala carried on using English terms. The English terms Bugala used included mandate, allocate, issue, open, and others. Lord Nuku'alofa kindly reminded Bugala that he needs to understand and respect the standing orders of the House. It is understood that the official language used in Parliament is the Tongan language, and other languages are not allowed, including the English language. Members of Parliament who do not comply will be dealt with by the House. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Agriculture's annual report 2021-2022 was approved in Parliament before the House was adjourned for next Wednesday. The best foundation for educating a child is when they're young. The Early Childhood Education Division of the Education Ministry is pushing for the initiative to have 3 to 5-year-olds enrolled in preschool. The concern is because there are Class 1 students struggling, and these are those who did not enroll in preschool. Waifanatu Pola tells you why.
The head of early childhood education in Tonga, Tongatapu, urges that the right investment of children's future begins at early childhood. Kaitapu clarifies to Radio Tonga News that it is evident that investing children while at the age range of 3 to 5 is a great foundation for their future. Kaitapu added that the generation of now is unique as they are quick learners to speak in compared to generations before. Meanwhile, the issue about early childhood education was highlighted by the Prime Minister Honorable Hokamiliku during the Worldwide Early Childhood Conference at the beginning of the month. As such, Hokamiliku told Radio Tonga News that it is vital for parents to start investing their children's future at young age by enrolling them to early childhood education schools, as has been established all around the kingdom to enable quick and fast accessibility of education for all. He added the concern is based on investing children at a young age, otherwise they'll suffer in the future if they'll start school too late. Meanwhile, latest report from the Ministry of Education states that only 50% of the children eligible to attend preschool are enrolling to study in early childhood education schools in Tonga. As such, the Ministry of Education held an outreach to the 50% of children who are not attending preschool to ensure the main reason behind their absence. The report found that the remaining 50% of children who are not attending preschools are due to personal issues and financial constraints. Some claimed that the preschools are far from their residence, amongst other issues. However, the government has established more than 48 preschools around Tonga, together for all children who are eligible for early childhood to attend. Waifanatu Pola for Radio and Television Tonga News.
Tonga is at low risk and no warning has been issued from the ashes released from the volcanic island of Late. Tonga Geological Services is currently monitoring the situation of the island since last week. Alisi Tupo tells you more.
Speaking to Radio and Television Tonga News, the Deputy Director of Tonga Geological Services, Reni Wayamonga, says they received a report and images of cracks on the island. Also, the weather was warmer with steam coming out. These images were sent to them by Digicel staffs last Thursday while they're on a project. Digicel staffs were frightened by the scene, and that's why Tonga Geological Services staffs are monitoring the current situation of Late. Late is located at the volcanic path western side of Tonga, as it's in the same line with Whanualei coming through Hunga, going south all the way to Tongatapu. That is the volcanic lane including Tofua and Kau, and it is understood there are active fires in those areas. If you all notice, in September, active fires appeared at Whanualei, so it is normal to have fires appear in those islands because they are located at the volcanic path. The Tofua Island always has a smoke, and that is normal. Staffs of Tonga Geological Services travelled in 1999 or 2000 to Late, and they experienced the same thing that is currently happening at the island. I understand that there are magma trying to expose to the atmosphere, but It is very low activity as is in the safe zone. It is understood that these activities are not unusual from the volcanic island of Late, and there are no restrictions issued for those traveling at the nearby areas. Reporting for Radio and Television Tonga News, I'm Ali Situpo.
The Prime Minister Honourable Huakavame Liku opened the 58th International Coconut Community Session via the internet yesterday. Vaifona Tupola with that story.
The Honourable Prime Minister Huakavame Liku has opened the 58th International Coconut Community Session via the internet yesterday. In his remarks, he highlighted that coconut in Tonga is traditionally the tree of life, as all coconut's parts, beginning with the traditional house of coconut logs and leaves, to food, drinks, oil, sauce, firewood from the coconut fruits, and even fish traps from the coconut roots, and cultural artifacts from the shoots, while flowers and other parts hold a very significant value. He says not much recognition was given to the coconut sector compared to previous years, with a huge proportion of the coconut production being consumed locally. The export of coconut are mainly to New Zealand and Australia, with mature coconuts and to a lesser extent whole grain coconut and handicraft artifacts from coconut.
However, the replanting of coconut is one big drive of the government, with the annual National Tree Planting Day in December, with subsidized seedlings and technical assistance. In the 1990s, Tonga has imported 7 Malayan 12 varieties from Indonesia for crossbreeding with our local Tonga tall varieties. However, at the first Category 4 cyclones, the damage to the Malayan 12s were so severe that since then have never recovered. Tonga was also in line to new coconut accessions from ICC, which was planted first in Papua New Guinea and to be distributed later to the countries of the South Pacific, including Tonga.
Meanwhile, different varieties of coconut are imported to Tonga from Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, with the project was temporarily suspended due to a severe virus disease of coconut being detected. However, Tonga is still hopeful that with the tissue of cultural technology will provide a safer pathway to import new coconut accession to the Kingdom of Tonga. Vaifona Tupola for Radio and Television Tonga News.
Growers are not deterred by the fact that cassava crops will be affected by the current weather, as they are adamant this will be a great contribution to Tonga's economy. Vaifona Tupola again with that story.
The concern with the issue was raised by the Prime Minister, Honourable Huakavame Liku, as one of the negative impacts from climate change. The concern is because these impacts will greatly affect the food sector, such as cassava. Honourable Huakavame Liku says if the temperature increases to 37 degrees Celsius, the cassava crops will be greatly affected and food security will be an issue. Cassava is one of the crops mostly consumed by people in Tonga every day. Meanwhile, a local grower, Sionetalia Ulifinau from Homa, says the impacts from climate change is an issue which officials should look into at the moment, but that does not mean it should stop the growers from growing these crops. He adds they are planting more cassava crops from January to December with hopes of exporting it overseas, with also distributing it to Tongan restaurants. It is understood that agriculture is affected in times of cyclone season, and they're not only planting one crop, but they are planting a different crop in times of climate change and natural disasters, so that they could earn income for their families. Finau also urges the local grower to grow more cassava crops despite the obstacles they will face from the weather. Meanwhile, the exporting of cassava overseas is still ongoing. Vaifona Tupola for Radio and Television Tonga News.
The outcomes of the Pacific Church Leaders Development Conference last week raises concern over Australia's commitment to do better in climate justice for its Pacifica family, particularly through firm commitments to the phase-out of fossil fuels and other issues such as the seasonal workers program. Vaifona Tupola with that story.
The outcomes of the Pacific Church Leaders Development Conference last week called for a greater engagement by development partners on understanding development as a whole-of-life issue, from the spiritual life to the ecological. The meeting discerned the necessity for greater preparation of the Pacific people to engage in migrant work schemes such as PALM or the Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme. The conference encouraged Australia through the PALM scheme to engage with churches in sending countries and in Australia to support this work, as well for a pathway to address accommodation fee challenges faced by the seasonal workers. Meanwhile, 100 religious and First Nation leaders from across Australia and the Pacific are urging Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to take action to combat climate change by stopping all new coal and gas projects and ending public subsidies to fossil fuel sector in Australia. And delegates from Tonga to the conference include Free Wesleyan Church President, Right Honourable Reverend Dr. David Takola Yahavea, and Tonga National Ecumenical Office Secretary General in Tonga, Reverend Ikani Tolu. For Radio and Television Tonga News, I'm Vafunatu Pola.
The Kingdom of Tonga has won the bid to host the Pacific Community's first ever Polynesian sub-regional office. The Pacific Community is the principal scientific and technical organization in the Pacific region, established in 1947 and owned and governed by 27 country and territory members, including Tonga. The decision was made by the Pacific Community's Committee of Representatives of Governments and Administrations and endorsed by the 12th Special Thematic Conference, which took place from the 23rd to the 25th of November in Port Vila, Vanuatu, attended by the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Honourable Whekita Moeloa Utoika Manu, who has led Tonga's bid to host the office. While the SPC has sub-regional offices for Melanesia and Micronesia, Tonga is to host the first office for Polynesia. The establishment of a Polynesia Regional Office presents an opportunity for the SPC to respond to emerging issues and to enhance its capacity to deliver programs for Polynesia. Tonga's successful bid is expected to boost its engagement in the organization and will provide a platform for improved partnership building, resource mobilization, donor coordination, and enhanced integrated country programming. The office is expected to be established in 2023. And Honourable Prime Minister received a courtesy call from the Director of Joint Staff of the Nevada National Guard. The Prime Minister, Honourable Hu'akaameliku, in his capacity as Minister for His Majesty's Armed Forces, received a courtesy call from Brigadier General Michael Pia, Director of Joint Staff of the Nevada National Guard, this morning at the Prime Minister's office. Brigadier General Pia's 4-day visit to the Kingdom is to officially re-establish the state partnership program between Nevada National Guard and His Majesty's Armed Forces, following the long absence of engagements related to COVID-19. The Pacific Partnership is an opportunity for the US and regional partners to work together in an effort to conduct medical engagements, engineering projects, outreach events, and HADR response activities to include continuing support for tsunami relief. Under this partnership program, the community halls for Te Kiu and for Amoto were built, with a health clinic for Te Whisi Vavau and the painting of school buildings. The medical engagements include dental support, optometry support, and others. During his visit to the Kingdom from the 26th to the 29th of November 2022, he visited the affected areas from the tsunami. Chief of Staff of His Majesty's Armed Forces, both the Daliai Camp and the Macefield Base, Maydeck and the Nemo Warehouse, and the Commissioner of Police. Sports news is next with Mark Ake, brought to you with the kind sponsorship of Pacific Timber and Hardware.
Welcome to this evening sports package with Radio and Television Tonga. To Rugby Union, Tonga won round 1 of the Oceania Rugby Under-20 trophy against Samoa at the Te Whaiwa Stadium this afternoon by 20 points to 19. Tonga stole the game at the last few minutes thanks to a rolling maul that saw number 8 Wikilotu Afeaki touchdown for his second try of the game. Samoa had an opportunity to win in the dying minutes after Tonga was penalized for kicking the ball out on the full from the 22 restart. However, Samoan flyer Tauvanga Kolena couldn't slot in the free-pointer. Samoa had another opportunity, but Tonga's defense held up to force an error. Samoa were dominant in all areas in the first half, which allowed them to get the first try of the match through strong running from Sam Asotasi, while Kolena converted a series of penalties to lead 19-3 at halftime. Tonga then got fired up in the second half and were killing it with their rolling maul, which saw Siosiua Sulunga score a meat pie and a double for Wikiloto Afeaki. Although Tonga's captain couldn't convert the final conversion, they still had a 1-point lead which they held on to until full time. Tongan skipper Ahokovi talked more on the final decision to go for the corner and execute a rolling maul for the match winner.
Back forward of the Samoa, we all win the forward of the Samoa. So we make a decision to use it forward, the scrum and maul, and we believe it. So that's why I thought we can lot to use the maul, and that's how we go. We get a try.
Meanwhile, Visesio Amituanai filled in for his captain in the post-match interview and said they have a few things to work on before the final round.
Probably we'll be working on our forwards. The strong team from Tonga, then their forwards they push their ball and then see their line score. Yeah, I hope we're gonna bounce back.
Only one more round remains, which will go down this Saturday at 3 p.m. at the Teowhaiva Park. The winner of this two-match clash will not only win the Oceania Rugby Under-20 trophy, but they will also secure a spot in next year's World Rugby Under-20 trophy. Tonga is coached by Tolo Old Boys head coach and former Ikaletahi number 8, Sias Atiola, and managed by Michael Ofonua. Samoa is coached by former Samoa halfback Rudolph Moores and managed by James Awai. The curtain raiser for Tonga and Samoa's match today was a semi-final fixture for the bottom 8 teams in the Tongatapu rugby competition between Toako Ma'afu and the Havelu Bulldogs, which the Toa won after a massive comeback in the second half to seal a 21-17 victory.
Now, before we part, is a final look at tonight's top stories. Parliament to resume next week with a reply to His Majesty's opening address. Chairman of the Whole House Committee warns members of Parliament to use a Tongan language only when deliberating in Parliament, and 3-year-olds to enroll in preschool as the best foundation for their learning. That's it for tonight. Thank you for your company. I'm Malia Gutenbell. Have a blessed evening.